This is still Unit 2, Part 1. And the previous images that we went over were of all of Mesopotamia. So we're going to float down a little south of that, and we're going to talk about Egypt, ancient Egypt. Now, so there is some essential knowledge that you need when looking at it and studying Egyptian works. So the some of the main ideas about Egyptian art is that Egyptian art is all about, well, so they were into the afterlife. Well, let me back up. All right, the Nile, right? The Nile is a big deal for ancient Egypt. And so it would flood, and then it would recede and flood and recede seasonally, every year, kind of how like we have like fake rain in the afternoon for like a week in the summertime, kind of like that, but more. So this would result in fertile land, and so that these crops would grow after the flooding. Now, the cyclical flooding of the Nile is sort of representative of their ideas, and I guess it kind of is part of their life, that their the circle of life, that there is a continuation after death. So they had a very, very not just a belief, almost an obsession with the afterlife. And so rebirth is important. The concept of the afterlife or eternity is important, and also permanence. We're going to start seeing we have a lot of existing architecture and artifacts from ancient Egypt because they were focused on the permanence of these objects, because they needed to last for eternity. There is a consistent, so like the next kind of like basic idea for Egypt is there is a consistent style, artistic style or aesthetic, throughout the majority of the works that we're going to go over. A majority of from the Old Kingdom, the New Kingdom, the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom. Ancient Egyptian art is all going to look the same, with the exception of one crazy time period where this like alien pharaoh decided to change everything for a little while. But we'll get into that. But for the most part, Egyptian art looks like Egyptian art. I mean, we all know what that looks like. Now they also, okay, so another thing we need to remember about Egyptian art is that they developed and innovated architecture that we still use to this day, elements of we still use to this day. Now, we're going to see some similarities between the Egyptian aesthetic and the art of a lot of later Mesopotamia. And that is because of trade within the region. And not only that, well, yeah, trade, and then like the occupation of the Mesopotamian lands by various groups, and spreading and exchanging cultures and all that. And yeah, so let's just go. So the ancient Egypt, the time period we're going to go over, I don't know why I didn't like just advance to at least what we're looking. So like while I'm talking, you should at least have something that says or looks Egyptian. So this is still the basic context. I'm still setting the scene for Egypt. And you can start writing down the image citation because it's a little long. They had a very strong and well organized society and military, and they were a major world power with an almost unbroken artistic tradition for about 3,000 years. So even though they were invaded by Persia and then later on Greece, their artistic traditions persisted. And they would even have an impact on the works of the ancient Greeks as well. And we'll see this when we study the ancient Greece. They were polytheistic, but there was one main god. Ra, Re, or Ra, or Ru. Any kind of conjugation of R and a vowel is their main god, which is the sun god. Remember how I said essentially most belief systems of the world are really way into the sun. All right, so let's just get into this one, and I'll expand more on some of the stylistic idiosyncrasies of Egyptian art. What we're looking at in this image is the palette of King Narmer. Who knows what a palette is? Like, just guess. You're probably right. Palette. Those of you who wear makeup, do you own a palette? Right. So the palette in Egyptian art or in Egyptian culture is where they would mix or make up their makeup, their eye makeup, the very distinctive black kohl, awesome looking eyeliner, right? It was like, okay, so like they, we've all seen it. So it had a specific function. It would kind of reduce the glare from the Egyptian sun, right? That they had a lot of sun. So it really did help with, coping with all of that. Athletes use that. Now they have like weird stickers. It completely has gone beyond the functionality of, reducing glare from lights. And now, I don't know, you see football players with just like weird looking Band-Aids on their face or with school colors or whatever. Just wear makeup, guys. Don't worry about it. Now, so the palette was a big deal. But this is the palette of King Narmer. But this did not function as a palette. This was a symbolic palette, a palette that King Narmer would use or could use in the afterlife. So the function is not to be because this is like way too big. Look at it. It's like it's over 2 feet long, and it's made out of a very, very hard and heavy stone called greywalk. So it could not function as a makeup palette. It's symbolic of that one. But it has another function, and that is to communicate a narrative. So the form is a relief sculpture, right? This is a low relief. So compared to the stele of Hammurabi, this absolutely is a low relief or a bas relief, B-A-S relief. I added more words up there on the word wall. A bas relief, a low relief, there's like barely any like indication, right? It's really subtle. So that's the form. Now let's look at some of the content. Very intricate, really cool stuff. So this is two-sided, right? This is not two palettes. This is two-sided. Overall, what the narrative is saying, or what the narrative, it's a historical narrative, it tells the story of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt by King Narmer. So he unified the Egyptian, the kingdom. And much like all of the other narratives we've looked at, these are separated into registers. So let's look at these registers here and kind of look at some more of the content. So the upper register has a god, Hathor, I think, Hathor. So the god Hathor is represented by a cow with a woman's face. And this is to symbolize, so the goddess Hathor was able to see past events and the future. That's a reminder to do this. Other times, for some reason, other times it's a representation of a bull, and that is a display of strength and power. So it's like omniscience and omnipotence, more or less. And that's consistent on both sides. So both sides have the same upper register. All right, so this is, so on this side, King Narmer. So that's on the next register. Which one do you think is the king? Yeah, the largest one. Hierarchical scale. You know, it took me several years to really pronounce that word correctly. Hierarchical. I'm just waiting for someone to tell me I'm still saying it wrong. All right, so we have King Narmer here pictured with, you know, his attendants. Right? He's wearing a very elaborate crown. This is the crown of Lower Egypt. In front of him are really low-ranking people. Their job is basically just to carry the battle standards in front of them. So they're just kind of holding, they're sign holders. And then behind them is a priest. And behind him is, I don't know, like his, valet or something. He is carrying his sandals and he washes his feet. In the desert, having someone washing your feet is got to be fantastic. So that's the thing. Desert people, foot washing is it's part of your ritual there, your daily kind of like self-care regimen. So that's what's happening here. What's happening over here? What does this look like? Decapitated dead people, and their heads are between their feet. So much like the war side of the Standard of Ur, we have some violence here. That's how you unify some kingdoms, I guess. Now, underneath that, we see two guys kind of wrangling these felines. Cats are way important in Egypt. They're like super important. If you have cats, you can kind of tell they still feel like they have, royalty in them. They had a very high status, and so cats were very, very, very sacred to the Egyptians. So these are stylized felines with elongated necks, and they're kind of intertwined, and that is symbolic of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. And on the lower register, we have a bull just trampling this guy and breaking stuff. And that is, of course, representative of Narmer being victorious over his enemies, those who resisted the unification. So that's one side. That's the Lower Egypt side. Any questions on that before I move on to the other side? There's a lot of symbolism here. Basically, you just got to be able to just understand that King Narmer's here. You got a lot of this. This is a very violent side. Well, they're both pretty violent, but that the intertwined necks of these felines represents unification, and the bull is power and strength and all that. And so on this side, we only have 3 registers. The top, of course, has got the cow god, goddess. Hey, I got paid $100. Yeah, that had nothing to do with anything. And anybody listening to this, okay, $100. No, my daughter, she has a job and she makes payments on her car. She goes, so it's just nice to see. Hey, you got $100 through Zelle. That's always fun. It's just going to go away real quick. That's the nature of being an adult and having money. You don't keep it. It just goes. All right. So I digress. Okay. So upper register, we have the cow with a woman's face. And the main portion of this, the center register, we have King Narmer here wearing a different crown. This is the crown of Upper Egypt. But on the right, we also have a falcon, and that represents the god Horus, Horus. And Horus is one of the god of Egypt, not the main one. That's Ra. But he's symbolizing sort of like the victory over his enemies. And you can see King Narmer is about to really just kind of smack this guy with this like scepter or club like thing, and we still have the guy just kind of behind him, ready to wash his feet with oils and liniments and holding his sandals. And here we have an image of the papyrus plant, and the falcon god Horus is holding an enemy's head with rope. And then on the bottom register again, more defeated enemies. So that is both content and context, right? This is all symbolic of, one, his military victory in unifying Upper and Lower Egypt. It's all violence, very violent. What this also demonstrates to us, and this also is a good example of the similarities between the Mesopotamian aesthetic of portraying human bodies and the Egyptian aesthetic. So we have the twisted perspective or the composite view, right? You have a face in profile, but a frontal eye. You have frontal representation of the shoulders, but the legs are in profile. So that is the twisted, and so this is like Egyptian art. But I don't know let's jump back. We have the technology. We see the composite view here as well, right? Frontal shoulders, profile feet, profile face. These guys all exchanged ideas. Same thing even on the Lost Stele of Hammurabi, right? So, any questions on the palette of Narmer? I think I got everything in there. Form, function, talked about that. Content and context. And this actually is the I guess first evidence or the work of art that really establishes the whole Egyptian artistic style that would continue on for millennia. 1055, right? All right, good. Any questions? All right. Let's look at this guy. The seated scribe. Now I think we're all familiar with the whole concept of Egyptian pharaohs being a god king, right? The Egyptian pharaoh is basically I blanked out. The Egyptian pharaoh is basically a descendant of the sun god Ra, and so whatever the pharaoh says goes. I mean, that's just it. The pharaoh is a god king, ruled by divine right, I guess. Yeah. So we all know that. And then so like these pharaohs, we know, I mean, through just popular culture, that they were interred in tombs after their death, right? They were put in sarcophagi, mummified, put into sarcophagi, and placed into tombs. so that they can move, so that they're, and they did this, they preserved the bodies so that they would be intact for the afterlife. But mostly so that the bodies could hold the spirit, like, in place. I'm not, it's really kind of hazy, the logic behind this, but the spirit, the Ka, K-A, has a home in the tomb in various objects. Now, the king or the pharaoh would have all of his necessary items with him for the afterlife. You know, all his creature comforts, his, I don't know, whatever he used in life. And that would include a scribe, the seated scribe. And so scribes were very, very important members of the royal court, because the art of writing was very, very, it was held in very high regard. There's even a god of reading and writing. I'll try and remember his name once we get to the end of Egypt. But yeah, so he's super important enough to have a statue in the pharaoh's tomb. This wasn't the scribe's tomb. His statue is in the pharaoh's tomb. Now, with these statues that are in tombs, what they are for is they're made to look like, for the most part, the people who they represent. They're meant to look like them because the spirit needs to be able to recognize itself, the Ka. So the Ka lives in that statue. That's its home. That's its place of familiarity. If you're floating around, you're a confused spirit. I don't know what to do. Where do I go? Oh, that looks like me. I guess I go there. And not everybody in Egypt had this. If you were just like some regular dude down the street, you died and that was the end of it. Nobody cared. But since scribes were so important and part of the royal court and necessary to the pharaoh, they had their own Ka statue. Now, there's some differences here, and we'll see that. I don't know why we don't go over the other Ka statues and then this one. So there are some distinct differences. Oh, come on. Okay. So, and this is painted limestone. So this guy, he just looks like a regular, I don't know, 45-year-old dude who just doesn't care and eats a bunch of carbs and has a good time, doesn't skip ice cream, all that stuff. And he just looks like a regular person, right? The higher ranked you are, the more idealized you are rendered in your Ka statue. So he's a scribe. He is important enough to have a Ka statue, but he's still just a scribe, and so this is what he looked like, most likely, in life. This is also not life size. We're not looking at life size yet. And at one time, he held probably a stylus, and he's holding a scroll of papyrus in his lap. And then, of course, he's wearing like a cool kilt, like all the other Egyptian men. But he's not idealized, and we see voids. We talked about voids in the votive statue, right? The space between like limbs and body. Yes, well, he has like voids here. So it's very, very, very naturalistic. Way more naturalistic than the votive statues, right? I mean, this is like an advancement toward faithfully rendering the human form. So good job, Egyptian artists. This is still the old kingdom, too. Now, like I said, the royal Ka statues would have, I guess, these pharaohs at the most ideal. Like, they look physically fit, they look youthful for eternity. And they also don't have the voids. They're just solid slabs of rock, monoliths almost. Now it is a freestanding sculpture, but it's meant to really just be viewed from the front. It's just really plain behind. So this is the first kind of freestanding statue we're seeing, or free sitting, as the case would be. And so yeah. Now, it's very likely that this is just kind of like a generalized what regular people look like. I mean, I don't really imagine that this looked like, the face looked like any particular individual, but it's very lifelike. There's even like shell inlays for the eyes that kind of really show that kind of life in his face. Look at those cheekbones. If he only put in the effort, right? I'm joking. Any questions about the seated scribe? All right, that's going to be it for today, because the next group of images is a lot. It is the Great Pyramids, and there's just like a lot of stuff. We don't have time for that in 5 minutes. I don't want to rush it. Any questions at all? All right.